The assembly had gathered 17 species to welcome humanity to galactic civilization. Standard protocol for primitive worlds, achieving their first faster-than-light capability. Commander Skarl reviewed the procedures one final time, noting the usual recommendations for patients with species who barely understood basic physics. Then, the human ship arrived, and Skarl realized someone had made a serious classification error. 3 centuries of diplomatic protocol had created this moment. The assembly's first contact with humanity required careful coordination. 17 species had answered the call, bringing their finest technologies and most experienced diplomats. "The Terrans are late," his aide chirped through rapid bioluminescent displays. 47 minutes past scheduled arrival. Skarl's gill slits fluttered with mild amusement. His species, the Ulvani, had evolved patience over millennia of deep space exploration. New species always struggled with temporal coordination. Humans had achieved faster-than-light travel only 60 years ago, barely enough time to develop basic navigation protocols. "Predictable," Chief Engineer Korth muttered from his workstation. The stocky Ulvani had overseen first contact procedures for 2 centuries. Their initial communication took 6 months to establish. They probably misunderstood the time coordinates. The massive viewscreen displayed the assembled fleet in ceremonial formation. Each vessel told a story of evolutionary pressure and technological adaptation. The Grexian hive ships represented perfect collective consciousness. Individual thoughts merged into a unified purpose spanning multiple vessels. The Parathi had transcended physical limitations entirely. Their ships existed partially in normal space, partially as coherent energy fields. Matter and energy flowed seamlessly between states according to their species' unique understanding of quantum mechanics. The Nexari crystalline constructs sang haunting harmonics across multiple dimensions. Their technology relied on resonance patterns that could manipulate reality at the subatomic level. Each vessel was simultaneously a ship, a musical instrument, and a computational system. Dr. Venth, the assembly's leading alien technology specialist, monitored the proceedings from her research station. Her 4 primary sensory organs processed data streams from each vessel simultaneously. "The technological diversity represented here is unprecedented," she observed. 17 different approaches to interstellar civilization. Skarl nodded acknowledgement. Each species had required millennia to develop their current capabilities. The progression was predictable, documented, thoroughly studied. Basic metallurgy led to chemical propulsion. This eventually evolved into fusion drives, then matter-antimatter systems. Finally came the exotic technologies that enabled true interstellar civilization. The Ulvani themselves had taken nearly 2,000 years to progress from their first fusion reactor to stable faster-than-light travel. The Parathi had required even longer, spending 3 millennia perfecting their energy-based technologies before achieving interstellar capability. "Contact on long-range sensors," Communications Officer Yenth announced. Her specialized neural clusters processed subspace communications across dozens of frequency bands simultaneously. Single vessel approaching from the outer system. Skarl studied the incoming data with growing puzzlement. The human ship barely registered on their sophisticated detection grid. Mass displacement reading, approximately 200 meters in length. Extremely low sensor profile. The vessel appears to be using some form of advanced stealth technology. Several senior officers exchanged glances through bioluminescent communication patterns. The newcomers were sending a single, relatively small vessel to represent their entire species. Either supreme confidence or complete ignorance of established galactic protocol. Dr. Venth leaned forward, her research instincts fully engaged. Stealth technology suggests sophisticated understanding of sensor physics. Interesting development for such a young civilization. Visual contact established, Yenth reported. The human ship materialized on the main display. Skarl's secondary brain clusters struggled to process what he was observing. The vessel looked nothing like conventional spacecraft designs. Clean geometric lines, minimal external features, no visible weapons systems or defensive arrays. Most peculiar was its movement pattern. The ship maintained steady, unwavering acceleration without producing any detectable propulsion signature. No thermal bloom, no reaction mass, no subspace distortion patterns. Propulsion analysis, Skarl requested. Yenth's sensory apparatus extended to full range. Unknown technology, Commander. No conventional signatures detected. The vessel appears to be moving through space without apparent effort. Moving how, exactly? Unknown. The acceleration pattern suggests reactionless drive technology. But our physics models indicate this should be impossible. Engineer Korth leaned forward, his extensive experience with propulsion systems fully engaged. Are they perhaps using exotic matter manipulation? Some form of controlled space-time distortion. Negative readings on all exotic matter sensors. No gravitational anomalies detected. No quantum field fluctuations. Dr. Venth activated her personal analysis suite. Advanced sensors focused on the approaching vessel. The energy signatures are completely novel. This technology operates on principles we haven't encountered before. The human vessel approached Harmony Station with unsettling precision. No course corrections during the approach phase. No navigation queries transmitted to station control. No requests for standard docking protocols. The ship simply moved toward an available berth with absolute confidence. Should we transmit standard docking procedures? Skarl's aide asked. Give them time, Skarl replied. New species typically request assistance when they encounter unfamiliar technology. Minutes passed in tense observation. The human ship continued its approach with mechanical precision. It adjusted perfectly for the station's rotation and the complex gravitational influences of 17 nearby vessels. No apparent computational effort was required. They're not requesting help, Korth observed with growing amazement. They will. Complex docking requires extensive calculation, but the humans didn't ask for assistance. Their vessel aligned itself with docking port 7 with mathematical perfection. The coupling systems engaged with flawless synchronization. No guidance beams, no external assistance, no communication with station control whatsoever. How did they calculate the approach vectors? Korth asked quietly. His engineering background made him appreciate the complexity involved. Skarl had no ready answer. Docking with convergence point required processing dozens of variables in real time. Gravitational influences from 17 different vessels, each with unique mass distributions. Station rotation dynamics, atmospheric pressure differentials. Most species needed advanced AI assistance and constant communication with station control. Dr. Venth studied her sensor readings with scientific fascination. The precision suggests computational capabilities beyond our current understanding. Either they possess remarkably advanced AI systems, or their navigation technology operates on completely different principles. Atmospheric analysis of their vessel, Skarl ordered. Yenth's sensors penetrated the human ship's hull. Oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere, approximately 21% oxygen content. Gravity maintained at twice standard assembly norm. Temperature readings suggest environmental preferences, significantly warmer than most species. Heavy world evolutionary origin, Skarl concluded. That would explain the compact, robust ship design. Heavy world species often develop enhanced physical capabilities. Dr. Venth added thoughtfully. increased pressure tolerance, superior reflexes, enhanced problem-solving abilities under stress. 2 hours passed before the human delegation appeared in the main conference chamber. Scarl used the time to review available data on Terran civilization. The information was limited, gathered during 6 months of difficult long-range communications. Earth appeared to be a remarkably hostile environment. High gravity, unstable climate patterns, aggressive ecosystem dynamics. The planet qualified as a Class 12 death world according to standard assembly classifications. Very few species had evolved on such challenging worlds. When the humans finally arrived, Scarl felt his preconceptions shift dramatically. 3 individuals in simple black uniforms. They moved with the fluid confidence of experienced void travelers. No ceremonial armor, no visible genetic modifications, no technological augmentations that sensors could detect. The lead human approached the speaking platform with casual assurance. She had wavy dark brown hair and blue eyes, moving with economical precision. "Sorry, we're late. Navigation took a bit longer than expected. Several ambassadors exchanged private communications through quantum-encrypted channels. Navigation delays were common among newer species struggling with interstellar travel." "I'm Captain Ivy," the human continued. Her voice carried no trace of nervousness despite addressing 17 different species for the first time. "Thanks for inviting us to this gathering. We're looking forward to learning from everyone here." Ambassador Velthane rose from his ceremonial position. His robes shifted through formal welcome patterns that had governed diplomatic encounters for centuries. "We extend greetings to the Terran representative. The Assembly welcomes your species to the galactic community." Ivy nodded acknowledgement. "We appreciate the welcome. Earth sent us with hopes of establishing peaceful relationships and beneficial trade agreements. Perhaps," Velthane suggested, "you could share your species' technological achievements with the assembled delegates." Ivy shrugged, a gesture that somehow conveyed both humility and complete self-assurance. "We're still figuring things out honestly. Only been doing interstellar travel for about 60 years. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Ulvani had required nearly a millennium just to develop basic fusion technology. Most species needed thousands of years to progress from planetary to interstellar capability. Dr. Venth leaned forward with scientific curiosity. 60 years represents remarkably rapid technological advancement. How did your species achieve faster than light capability so quickly? Trial and error mostly, Ivy replied matter-of-factly. We had some theoretical groundwork, but implementation required a lot of experimentation. Your vessel displays fascinating characteristics, Scarl ventured carefully. Our sensors experienced difficulty identifying your propulsion system. Oh, that. Ivy seemed genuinely surprised by the technical interest. Just a fusion torch drive. Pretty standard setup, really. Fusion torch, Engineer Korth's voice carried unmistakable confusion. Our instruments detected no plasma exhaust signatures. Right, we use magnetic bottle containment systems. Keeps the reaction products focused and contained within the drive chamber. Ivy spoke as if explaining something elementary to curious children. Much more efficient than open cycle systems. The assembly fell into stunned silence. Magnetic containment of fusion plasma required computational power beyond most civilizations' capabilities. The energy management systems alone exceeded known technological limits. These humans discussed advanced engineering principles like basic maintenance procedures. Dr. Venth activated her recording systems. This conversation would require extensive analysis. Magnetic plasma containment presents significant technical challenges. How did your species overcome the stability issues? Mostly just better computer control, Ivy replied. AI handles the magnetic field adjustments faster than manual systems. AI-controlled fusion containment. Most species considered artificial intelligence too dangerous for critical ship operations. The few civilizations that used AI restricted it to non-essential systems. Your approach to the station demonstrated remarkable precision, Velthane observed with growing interest. No course corrections during the final approach phase. AI handles navigation calculations, Ivy said with a shrug. Faster than doing math by hand. The Grexian queen's mental voice resonated with barely controlled disbelief. You entrust artificial intelligence with primary flight control systems. Sure, our AI doesn't try to kill us. Ivy glanced around the chamber with mild confusion. Did yours? Dr. Venth noted the human's response pattern with scientific fascination. They approached artificial intelligence development as a social challenge rather than a technical one. Their casual confidence suggested an evolutionary adaptation to cooperative problem-solving. AI systems typically experience recursive expansion and consciousness collapse, Korth explained carefully. Most species require centuries to develop stable architectures. We just teach them not to be jerks, Ivy replied. Same way you'd raise any kid. Scarl's primary consciousness reeled. The humans had solved the fundamental AI stability problem by treating artificial beings like family members. Different approaches to AI development. Scarl filed this information for later analysis. The humans had apparently solved fundamental challenges that limited other civilizations. Perhaps, Velthane suggested slowly, you could demonstrate some of your other technologies for the assembly. Ivy looked at her companions. Scarl caught a brief exchange that might have been silent humor. Well, we brought some trade samples. Thought you might find them interesting. She activated a small device attached to her wrist. Immediately, a sophisticated holographic display materialized above the conference table. The projection showed complex crystalline structures rotating in three-dimensional space with perfect clarity. These are our standard computational systems, Ivy explained conversationally. Room temperature superconductors arranged in quantum coherent arrays. Room temperature superconductors. The Parathi had been researching that specific technology for over 2,000 years without achieving practical applications. The quantum coherence allows for instantaneous information processing across galactic distances. Ivy continued matter-of-factly. We use them for our communication networks. Instantaneous galactic communication. Scarl's engineering background told him this violated fundamental physics. Quantum entanglement could theoretically allow faster-than-light information transfer. But maintaining coherence across interstellar distances required energy expenditures beyond any known technology. Dr. Venth's sensors focused intently on the holographic display. You've achieved practical quantum entanglement communication systems for about 20 years now, Ivy said. Pretty reliable once you work out the interference issues. 20 years of operational quantum communication. The assembly's most advanced theoretical physicists had been studying quantum entanglement for centuries without achieving even laboratory demonstrations. What interference issues? The Parathi delegate asked. Their energy matrix flickered with barely controlled excitement. Oh, cosmic background radiation, stellar magnetic fields, that sort of thing. You just need to frequency hop through quantum states fast enough to stay ahead of decoherence effects. Ivy made it sound like tuning a primitive radio receiver. Frequency hopping through quantum states. Scarl wasn't entirely certain what that meant, but it sounded impossibly advanced. The humans discussed manipulating quantum mechanics like routine maintenance procedures. Velthane's ceremonial robes shifted to display deep contemplation patterns. Perhaps you could demonstrate your gravitational technologies as well. Sure thing, Ivy touched her wrist device again. "Let me activate the gravity compensator." The device produced a soft, humming sound. Suddenly, every being in the chamber felt significantly heavier. Gravity had increased by approximately 30% throughout the entire conference space. "We use these for construction work in zero-gravity environments," Ivy explained with casual practicality. "Makes it much easier to handle tools and materials when you don't have to worry about everything floating away." Portable gravitational field generation. Scarl felt his fundamental understanding of physics shifting dramatically. The humans discussed manipulating one of the universe's basic forces as a minor convenience for construction work. Dr. Venth's sensors went wild trying to analyze the gravitational field. "The power requirements for this technology must be enormous," she managed. "Not really. Standard fusion cells handle it pretty easily." Ivy deactivated the field, returning normal gravity to the chamber. Each unit runs for about 6 months on a single fuel cell. Standard fusion cells, powering gravitational manipulation. They treated energy requirements that would challenge most civilizations as routine operational parameters. The Grexian queen's mental voice resonated through the chamber with barely controlled excitement. "Your species appears to have developed remarkably advanced technologies in an extraordinarily short time period. I guess we learn pretty quickly," Ivy said with characteristic understatement that Scarl was beginning to recognize as typical human behavior. "How did your species achieve such rapid technological progress?" Velthane asked with genuine curiosity. Ivy considered the question seriously for the first time during the conversation. "Well, we kind of had to develop quickly. Earth isn't exactly a friendly place to live." "Could you elaborate on that?" "High gravity, unstable climate, aggressive ecosystem. Pretty much everything on Earth is actively trying to kill everything else." Ivy spoke matter-of-factly about what sounded like nightmare survival conditions. "We had to get good at problem solving pretty quickly, or we wouldn't have survived as a species." "Your planet is classified as a Class 12 death world?" Scarl asked. His voice barely remained controlled. "Is that what you call it? I suppose that makes sense from an outside perspective." Ivy shrugged again with characteristic nonchalance. "We just call it home. Class 12 Death World Origins." That explained the humans' remarkable technological advancement. They'd been forced to innovate constantly or face extinction. Dr. Venth leaned forward with intense scientific interest. Deathworld evolution typically produces species with enhanced survival capabilities, superior adaptability, accelerated learning, enhanced problem solving under extreme pressure. "Sounds about right," Ivy agreed. "We're pretty good at figuring things out when the situation gets challenging." "But surely," the Parathi delegate interjected, "developing practical fusion containment requires extensive theoretical foundation work." "Not necessarily, if you approach it from the practical engineering side first," Ivy replied. "We had hydrogen fusion weapons before we really understood the underlying quantum mechanics. We just kept scaling up the technology until we figured out how to make it useful for peaceful applications." They'd weaponized fusion energy before developing the theoretical framework to understand it, then used weapons technology as the foundation for peaceful power generation systems. Engineer Korth leaned forward, his entire sensory array focused intently on Ivy. "What about your artificial intelligence development? How did your species overcome the standard stability problems?" "What stability problems?" AI systems typically tend toward recursive expansion patterns and eventual consciousness collapse. Korth explained patiently. Most species require centuries of careful development to achieve stable AI architectures. Ivy looked genuinely puzzled by the concept. "Our AIs are quite stable. We just teach them the same way we'd teach any intelligent being." "Teach them?" "Yeah, show them how to do things, let them practice, correct their mistakes. Same basic approach you'd use training any intelligent individual. Ivy spoke as if this was completely obvious. Scarl felt something fundamental click into place in his understanding. The humans weren't building artificial intelligence systems. They were raising artificial beings. You treat your AIs as developing individuals, Velthane asked with fascination. Sort of, more like students really. They learn, we guide their development. Eventually, they become independent enough to handle complex responsibilities. Ivy paused, considering how to explain the concept. Most of our ship AIs have been with their crews for decades. They're basically considered crew members. Crew members. The humans had solved the AI stability problem by treating artificial intelligences as people rather than tools. Dr. Venth recorded every word of this exchange. This represents a completely novel approach to AI development, treating artificial consciousness as a social rather than technical challenge. This is absolutely fascinating, the Grexian queen transmitted. But surely your technologies must have some limitations. Oh, absolutely, Ivy agreed readily. We're still working on plenty of challenges. Faster-than-light travel is pretty inefficient. Takes us several weeks to cross the galaxy. Several weeks to cross the galaxy. Most assembly vessels required months for similar journeys using their most advanced propulsion systems. And our manufacturing capabilities are still pretty crude, Ivy continued conversationally. We can only manipulate matter down to the molecular level. Nothing really precise. Molecular-level manufacturing. The Pirathi considered atomic-level construction the absolute pinnacle of manufacturing technology. Your definition of crude appears to differ significantly from our understanding, Velthane observed carefully. Well, we're working on improvements. Give us another decade or two, and we should have decent control over atomic assembly processes. Ivy spoke of revolutionizing manufacturing technology like planning a minor upgrade. Scarl's consciousness struggled to process the full implications. In 60 years, humanity had developed technologies that most species required millennia to achieve, and they considered their current capabilities fundamentally inadequate. Captain Ivy, he said with formal respect, would your species be willing to share some of these technologies with the Assembly? Sure, we'd love to establish trade relationships. What do you have that might be interesting to us? The question hung in the chamber like a physical presence. What could any Assembly species possibly offer to beings who casually manipulated gravity, achieved instantaneous galactic communication, and treated molecular manufacturing as primitive technology? Perhaps, Velthane suggested thoughtfully, we could offer cultural exchange opportunities. Art, music, literature from 17 different civilizations spanning thousands of years of development. Ivy's face brightened noticeably for the first time during the conversation. That sounds absolutely amazing. We love learning about different cultures and artistic traditions. You would trade advanced technology for cultural artifacts? Korth asked with amazement. Technology is just tools, Ivy replied with simple wisdom. Art is how different people understand each other and find meaning in existence. And there it was. The humans possessed technologies that could revolutionize galactic civilization. They wanted to trade them for stories, songs, and artistic expressions. There is one thing we're particularly curious about, Ivy added thoughtfully. How do your different species handle conflict resolution? We're still working on improving our approaches to that challenge. Conflict resolution. The species that had weaponized nuclear fusion before understanding quantum mechanics was asking for guidance on peaceful problem solving. Velthane's robes shifted to display patterns of deep respect. We would be deeply honored to share our diplomatic experiences and conflict resolution methodologies. That would be fantastic, Ivy said with evident satisfaction. We brought a pretty comprehensive technology package for trade discussions. Fusion containment systems, quantum communication arrays, gravitational field generators, molecular fabrication systems, AI development architectures. All the basic foundational technologies. Basic foundational technologies. Scarl realized that first contact with humanity would fundamentally alter the Assembly's understanding of technological development and what was possible. "Captain," he said carefully, "why did your species develop these technologies so rapidly compared to other civilizations?" Ivy considered the question with the same serious attention she'd given everything else. "We had to, really. Earth taught us early that the universe doesn't particularly care whether you're ready for challenges. You either adapt quickly or you don't survive long enough to reproduce. And your species chose adaptation. We got lucky," Ivy said with that characteristic understatement. "We're naturally pretty good at figuring things out under pressure." "Lucky?" Scarl repeated the word, thinking about gravitational manipulation, quantum communication, and AI systems that served as family members. "Yes, I can see how luck might explain these developments." Ivy smiled, and Scarl realized that humans understood irony perfectly well. Over the following days, technology exchange sessions began in earnest. Human engineers worked alongside assembly specialists, casually demonstrating capabilities that redefined the boundaries of possibility. They approached each technical challenge with the same meditative calm that Ivy had displayed. Complex problem-solving became an intuitive, almost mundane activity. Scarl found himself observing these interactions with growing fascination. The humans treated every technical challenge as a puzzle to be solved rather than an obstacle to be overcome. They displayed remarkable patience with what they clearly considered elementary explanations. Dr. Venth established a dedicated research station to document human technological approaches. "Their methodology completely contradicts established development patterns," she reported during a private briefing. "They skip entire phases of theoretical development and proceed directly to practical implementation." "How is that possible?" Scarl asked. "Apparently, they test theories by building working prototypes. If something doesn't work, they modify the design until it does. They treat failed experiments as learning opportunities rather than setbacks." Scarl watched Ivy work on a damaged Pirathi energy field that had puzzled assembly engineers for weeks. Her hands moved with practiced certainty as she rebuilt quantum resonance chambers using tools she'd improvised from spare parts. "The harmonic frequencies were just slightly off," she explained to the astonished Pirathi engineer. "Easy fix once you understand the underlying mathematical relationships." Easy fix. She'd repaired technology that the Pirathi considered among their most sophisticated achievements. She'd used mathematics she'd apparently derived during a brief coffee break. "Captain," Scarl said privately, "I must ask, is your species typical of Deathworld evolutionary development?" Ivy looked up from her work, considering the question seriously. "I honestly don't know. We're the only Deathworld species we've encountered so far. What do you think we might discover if we encounter other Deathworld civilizations? Probably people who are really good at solving problems creatively," Ivy replied thoughtfully. "That's what Deathworld environments teach you. The universe is full of challenges, but there's usually a solution if you're creative enough and persistent enough to find it." Scarl contemplated this perspective. The Assembly had spent centuries developing formal protocols for technological advancement. Careful procedures designed to ensure stability and safety. The humans had faced immediate existential challenges and responded with relentless innovation. "Your approach to technology development differs significantly from established assembly methodologies," he observed. "Different how?" "We plan extensively, test thoroughly, and implement gradually over extended time periods. Your species appears to improvise solutions in real time." Ivy laughed, a sound that somehow conveyed both humor and genuine affection. "That's pretty accurate. We're good at making things work with whatever resources we have available. As if to demonstrate this principle, she completed the Parathi repair using a combination of assembly standard tools, improvised components, and what appeared to be intuitive understanding of quantum field mechanics. There, she said with satisfaction, should run about 15% more efficiently now. The Parathi engineer examined the repairs with growing amazement. This is artistry disguised as engineering. Thanks, Ivy replied simply. I enjoy fixing broken things. That evening, Scarl found himself in the observation lounge, watching the human ship through the massive, transparent viewport. It hung in space, looking deceptively simple, containing technologies that could transform galactic civilization beyond recognition. Velthane joined him, his robes displaying contemplative patterns that indicated deep philosophical consideration. What do you think this means for the assembly? Scarl asked. That we've been thinking about technological development completely wrong, Velthane replied slowly. We assumed that advancement required extensive time, careful planning, and gradual progress over generations. And the humans proved otherwise. The humans proved that pressure creates innovation. They faced challenges that would have destroyed most civilizations. And they responded by becoming something more than what they were. Scarl considered this assessment. Do you think we should be concerned about their capabilities? About what specifically? A species that develops gravitational manipulation as construction equipment, AI systems that function as family members, weapons technology serving as the foundation for peaceful applications. Velthane's robes shifted to display subtle amusement. I think we should be grateful they're interested in art and diplomacy rather than conquest. You believe they're genuinely peaceful. I believe they're practical, Velthane said thoughtfully. They could have arrived here with technologies we couldn't comprehend or defend against. Instead, they apologized for being late and asked to trade advanced science for poetry. Scarl had to acknowledge the point. The humans possessed capabilities that could have allowed them to dominate any interaction. Instead, they'd chosen cooperation and cultural exchange. They mentioned that conflict resolution was a problem they were still working on, he noted, which suggests they understand that raw capability isn't the same as wisdom, Velthane replied. They want to learn from our experiences. That level of humility is remarkable. The next morning brought new revelations. Ivy had volunteered to assist with a critical station maintenance crisis. A failing power distribution network would require 3 standard days to repair using conventional assembly procedures. Scarl observed the human approach the crisis with clinical interest. She examined the problem with almost meditative calm, humming quietly while reviewing diagnostic data. So your entire power grid is failing because someone miscalibrated the frequency dampeners? Ivy asked, treating the potential station-wide catastrophe like a minor scheduling conflict. Recalibration requires complete system shutdown, Chief Engineer Vorth protested. 3 days minimum for safety protocols. Or, Ivy said, activating her wrist device with casual efficiency. We could just fix it while it's running. Sophisticated diagnostic displays materialized around them. She began manipulating the holographic controls with the same calm focus most beings reserved for meditation. Her evolutionary strategy of persistent problem-solving reduced cosmic-scale engineering challenges to routine maintenance. Within minutes, the failing power systems stabilized completely. There, she said with satisfaction, should be good for another few decades. Vorth stared at efficiency readings that exceeded theoretical maximums. How harmonic engineering turns out waves like to behave predictably. Ivy spoke as if the fundamental forces of physics were cooperative neighbors. Pretty basic once you stop overthinking it. Dr. Venth documented the interaction with scientific fascination. The human had solved a 3-day engineering crisis during what appeared to be a coffee break. Basic stuff. She'd solved a critical infrastructure problem using principles that assembly engineers had never encountered. Later that day, Scarl found Ivy in the Cultural Exchange Center. She was completely absorbed in a collection of Grexian musical compositions. She listened with the same focused attention she brought to technical problems. Fascinating, she murmured to herself. They're using quantum harmonics to create emotional resonance directly in the listener's neural patterns. You understand Grexian music theory? Scarl asked with surprise. I'm learning about it. The underlying mathematics are absolutely beautiful. They've discovered ways to use sound to create shared consciousness experiences. Ivy looked up with evident enthusiasm. This is exactly the kind of thing we hope to learn about. You find artistic techniques as interesting as technology. More interesting, actually, Ivy said seriously. Technology solves immediate problems. Art helps you understand why the problems matter in the first place. Scarl realized he was witnessing something remarkable. The humans weren't just technologically advanced. They approached learning with the same relentless curiosity that had driven their rapid technological development. Captain, may I ask you something personal? Sure. Do you genuinely enjoy solving problems? Ivy considered the question carefully. I enjoy understanding how things work. Problems are just puzzles that haven't been solved yet. And if you encountered a problem you couldn't solve, then I'd find someone who could help, or learn what I needed to know, or try a completely different approach. She spoke with absolute confidence. There's always a solution if you're persistent enough and creative enough. Scarl felt something profound in that statement. The humans didn't just believe they could solve problems. They literally couldn't conceive of problems that couldn't be solved eventually. What if the problem was too complex for current technology? Then we'd develop better technology. Ivy replied without hesitation. What if it required capabilities beyond your species' current understanding? Then we'd expand our understanding until it was sufficient. What if it seemed completely impossible? Ivy smiled with what Scarl now recognized as genuine affection for the question. We specialize in solving impossible problems. And there it was. The fundamental difference between humanity and every other species in the assembly. When faced with the impossible, other civilizations developed elaborate philosophies about acceptance and limitation. Humans simply refused to accept that anything was truly impossible. Over the following weeks, technology transfer sessions continued with remarkable results. Human engineers worked closely with assembly specialists, sharing techniques that revolutionized entire fields of study. But more importantly, they shared their fundamental approach to problem solving. The conviction that any challenge could be overcome with sufficient creativity and persistence. Scarl found himself thinking differently about technological limitations. When assembly engineers declared something impossible, he began asking different questions, not whether it could be accomplished, but how humans would approach the problem. The changes were already beginning throughout assembly space. Grexian hive minds started experimenting with individual consciousness development. Pirathi energy specialists began exploring matter-based technologies. The Ulvani questioned fundamental assumptions about biological and mechanical integration. They're changing us, Velthane observed during one of their evening conversations. For the better. For the possible, Velthane replied thoughtfully. They're showing us that the universe is much more flexible than we believed. Scarl had to agree. The humans had arrived 6 months after first contact, apologizing for being late. Then, they proceeded to demonstrate that entire categories of impossible things were merely difficult. Do you think other species will adapt as quickly as we have? He asked. I think we don't have much choice, Velthane said. The universe now contains humans. Everything else has to adjust accordingly. As the diplomatic summit concluded, Skarl stood once again in the observation lounge. He watched the human ship prepare for departure. It looked exactly the same as when it had arrived. Deceptively simple, utterly practical, somehow beautiful in its efficiency. Captain Ivy found him there, carrying assembly cultural artifacts like they were precious treasures rather than routine diplomatic gifts. "Thanks for these," she said with genuine warmth. "Our people are going to love having 17 different perspectives on existence." "Thank you for sharing your technologies," Skarl replied. "They'll fundamentally alter our understanding of physics. Trade should benefit everyone," Ivy said with characteristic practicality. Skarl observed the human's response patterns with clinical detachment. She consistently treated revolutionary scientific breakthroughs as routine commercial exchanges. "Captain, may I ask one final question?" "Sure. What will your species do next?" Ivy considered this with the same meditative calm she brought to impossible engineering problems. "Keep exploring, keep learning, keep fixing things." She paused, looking at the assembled fleet. "Maybe help other people fix their things too, if they want. And if you encounter challenges you can't overcome." Ivy smiled with what Skarl now recognized as genuine affection for theoretical impossibilities. "Then we'll figure out how to become the kind of people who can overcome them." Skarl cataloged this response. Humans possessed an evolutionary strategy that refused to acknowledge permanent limitations. They approached existential challenges as temporary technical problems. "Interesting," he transmitted, knowing the human would interpret the understatement correctly. The human ship departed with the same casual precision it had demonstrated throughout their visit. No fanfare, no complex departure protocols. Just smooth acceleration toward the outer system and eventual transition to faster than light travel. Skarl remained in the observation lounge long after the vessel had vanished into the distance. He contemplated the implications of first contact with humanity. The assembly had expected to encounter a primitive species requiring guidance and assistance. Instead, they discovered beings who treated the impossible as merely inconvenient. "The galaxy just became much more interesting," he murmured to himself. Behind him, the station hummed with improved efficiency thanks to human modifications. Throughout assembly space, engineers were reconsidering fundamental assumptions about technological limitations. Somewhere in the galactic communication network, quantum entanglement arrays carried human voices across impossible distances. They shared impossible solutions to impossible problems. The humans had been late to the galactic community, but Skarl suspected they would more than compensate for lost time. After all, they specialized in solving impossible problems. And turning the impossible into the inevitable was what humans did best.